Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. So in this video, I am going to do a ranking for you. Seeing as it's October and it's Halloween season, I thought I would give you a ranking of the Halloween series of films. So that's all 13 official Halloween films. And I'm going to do this ranking in the form of a tier list. So you might have seen other YouTubers doing this type of ranking before. You might have seen myself doing it. I did it recently with the Alien series of films. If you want to check that video out, I'll leave a link in the description below. But yeah, what I will do now is I will switch the camera around so you can see my screen. I'll explain how the tier list is going to work, and yeah, I will rank all the films. So let's get into it. Right then, guys, so we have our tier list here. And as you can see, we have 6 tiers. So we have S, A, B, C, D, and E. And as you can imagine, this is going to be a ranking from, well, with my favourites going from the S tier all the way down to my least favourites, which will go towards the bottom into the E tier. We have our 13 films here. And what I'm going to do, just to make it a bit more interesting, is I'm only going to allow 2 films per category. With the exception of one, which will need to have 3 in it. But I just want to do it this way, just so I can kind of spread the films out a bit more, not have so many films in a particular tier, and yeah, just to kind of spread it out a bit more. So with that being said, let's go straight into the first movie, and I'm going to do this just in chronological release order. So we're going to go with Halloween 1 first, released in 1978, directed by John Carpenter. You know, this is the film that very much put him on the map. Simple slasher movie about this kid called Michael Myers who murders his sister. He's sent to a detention center. He escapes 15 years later and continues his killing spree on Halloween nights, targeting these babysitters who are babysitting on Halloween nights. Yeah, I mean, this film is probably going to be an easy S tier for me, and I don't think it's ever going to move from there. Even though it's not necessarily my favorite in the series, it's just such a great slasher movie. It's all about the atmosphere and the tension. It's not about jump scares and gore and all that kind of stuff. And it's been replicated so many times by other slasher movies, but yeah, it's still one of the best ones to this day. So yeah, Halloween 1's an easy S tier for me. Right, so then we go on to Halloween 2. So this is the one that takes place literally straight away after Halloween. We see Jamie Lee Curtis's character going to the hospital, Donald Pleasance and the police trying to hunt down Michael, who has disappeared, and then he continues his killing spree at the hospital where Jamie Lee Curtis's character is staying. So this film, I mean, I know a lot of people really like this one, and yeah, I mean, I will probably say that it is still one of the better sequels in the series, but I think for me, I just think this one tries to be too much like the original, and it just doesn't work as well. I mean, it definitely ups the gore, and it feels a bit more mean-spirited in comparison to the first one, but I just find this one a little bit boring, if I'm being honest, but it does still have a lot of good moments to it. I do like the ending, but a lot of the time it's just kind of wandering through the hospital. Jamie Lee Curtis spends most of the movie in bed, and she just doesn't really have much of a part in this film. But I do enjoy all the stuff with Donald Pleasance, and I do like the fact that it does retain that atmosphere from the first one, but I kind of think it was a mistake of them setting this one straight after the first one, because I think in doing that, it kind of undermines the ending of the first movie. But it's still a solid sequel. It's a decent watch. It's just not like anywhere near the first one for me. But there are a lot worse sequels than this one. So I think for now I'm going to put this one in the B tier. Right, so that brings us on to Halloween 3. Yeah, this is the one that doesn't have Michael Myers in it. It's the only one in the series that doesn't have Michael Myers. It's like an anthology film. It's basically about this toy company that are making masks, and it's like the toy company owner's evil scheme is for the masks to kill all of the children on Halloween night. And yeah, this film for me is an S tier, and it is my favorite one in the series. I just love this movie. I love the atmosphere. I really like the cast. I like the location of the film, the music, the Carpenter music, I should say. And even though John Carpenter didn't direct this one, it feels like his fingerprints are all over this movie. I love the story, even though some people might argue it's a little bit silly. I just have always liked it, and I love how this movie ends. I mean, to this day, the ending of this one still gives me chills. And it feels like a movie that in the last 10 years has really gained such a big appreciation now. I've always loved this one. Even when I first saw it, I just took it for what it was. I didn't care that Michael Myers was in it. I just wanted it to be a good film, and for me, it is a great film. And if there's only one film that I can watch on Halloween night, it will always be Halloween 3. I just love the movie. So, yeah, it's my favourite in the series, and it's in the S tier. Right, so on to Halloween 4 now. So this is the one that sees the return of Michael Myers after like a 10-year absence. And this is the first film that really sort of brings the whole family dynamic into it. And, you know, he only kills people in his family bloodline. This one involves his niece, Jamie, played by Danielle Harris. And yeah, it's basically just Michael going after her, and, you know, all the people around her are trying to stop him. And yeah, I think this one is a decent sequel. I think like Halloween 2, it's a solid, decent sequel. It's not one of the best, it's not one of the worst. I would say this film is very inoffensive. It doesn't really take any risks. It's just a very, very standard slasher movie. That could be a positive aspect to it, but it could also be a detriment to it because, yeah, maybe it is just a little bit too generic. But having said that, it's definitely not one of the worst in the series. It's just not really, you know, an amazing film either. So I think like Halloween 2, I'm going to put that one in the B tier. Right, so on to Halloween 5 now. So this is the one that takes place after Halloween 4. It was released, I think, less than a year after Halloween 4. I feel like they tried to rush the production of this one. This one feels very, very similar to Halloween 4. You know, it's the continuation of Jamie's story, starring Danielle Harris. But I feel like this one is maybe a little bit more experimental. It definitely has more of a giallo, kind of European kind of feel to it. And I feel that's maybe down to the fact that they hired a French director to make this one. So I feel like this film does take a little bit more risks with its story, if you like. I think this one has a lot of good aspects to it, but I think it has a lot of bad aspects as well. I mean, tonally, this film is all over the place. I mean, there are parts where this film feels really dark and really mean spirited, but then there are other times where it feels a bit goofy and a bit silly, you know, involving, you know, the two sort of cop characters. It just feels a bit tonally all over the place. And also, they introduce the cult storyline in this one, but they don't really offer much. And you know, I've read that the writers of this film basically introduced the cult storyline, but they didn't really know what it was going to be, and their intention was that writers for future sequels would basically pick up the pieces for them, which feels a bit lazy to me. But at the same time, I do think this film has some creepy moments. I really enjoy all of the scenes in the house. And even though the Myers house doesn't look anything like the Myers house from the first film, unless he's had major renovation work, it's obviously a big sort of continuity error. But I still love all of the scenes in there. I think the scene where Jamie is trapped in the laundry chute is a genuinely scary part of the film, and it's very, very tense. I think Danielle Harris is great in this film, considering she was only like 10 or 11. She is absolutely brilliant in this movie. And Donald Pleasance, even though he's really hamming it up in this one, I do just enjoy watching him in these Halloween movies nonetheless. So yeah, it's not one of the best in the series, and yeah, it does have a lot of bad qualities to it, but I do still kind of enjoy it. So I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Right, so on to Halloween 6 now, The Curse of Michael Myers. This is the one that came out about 6 years after the fifth one. It had a very, very long development, production. This one is a very ambitious film. This is the one that really tries to expand on the cult storyline, and it tries to explain why Michael Myers is the way he is. But for me, I've always found the production of this film more interesting than the actual film itself. It feels like the creators of this film had one idea for it and the studio had another. I feel like the creators wanted it to be a much more mythological type of film, but you can tell that the studio just wanted it to be another slasher. So it's tonally a bit all over the place. But the problem I have with this one is that even though it tries to be a bit more ambitious, it's just so bland and boring to me. And it just doesn't work at all, even though I feel like it should. It feels tired, this movie, even though it's trying to do something different. It just feels very, very tired and boring. And I've never liked this one, and I've always wanted to like it, but I've just never been able to get into it. And like I said, I just think the history of this film is more interesting than the actual film. So this one is going to go in the E tier for me. Right, so on to Halloween H2O. So this is the one that is set 20 years later. This was the one that basically tried to, well, it's the first one that tries to reset everything and ignore all of the sequels and basically just be a continuation of Halloween 1 and 2. This one sees the return of Jamie Lee Curtis 20 years later. She's assumed a new identity. She's working at this boarding school where her son, played by Josh Hartnett, is also a student at. And of course, Michael Myers returns and tries to track her down. So yeah, this one seems to be, it seems to have quite a following, this one. I know a lot of people really, really like this one. I've got to admit, I've always found this film a little bit overrated. Um, I just think even though it tries to kind of reset everything, again, it just comes across as a bit generic and a bit boring. And I feel like it's similar to Halloween 4 in the sense that it's a very inoffensive film. It doesn't, try to take too much risk. But unlike Halloween 4, I just don't find this film fun. I feel like it takes a long time to get going, and then even when it does get going, the last act of the film is very underwhelming to me and just not really as scary as I want it to be. I've never liked how Michael Myers looks in this film. I mean, forget the fact that they couldn't decide what mask to give him in this film. He has about 3 or 4 different masks in this film, but also the guy who plays him just doesn't have a very intimidating, imposing presence. He looks like he's a very average build guy. It looks like I'm playing Michael Myers in this film, and I've just never found him particularly intimidating in this film. But it's still it's okay. I just don't think it's as good as a lot of people seem to make it out to be. But I do quite like the ending, like the last 10 minutes. It is a good way to end the film. Yeah, it's very generic. It's an inoffensive film, but it's just not as fun as some of the other ones. So I'm gonna put this one alongside Halloween 5 in the C tier. Right, so on to Halloween Resurrection now. This one continues on from Halloween H2O. It retcons the ending in the absolute worst way possible. And I know this film is considered one of the worst amongst the fans. And I can definitely understand that. It involves these live streamers going into the Myers house to set up a live stream during Halloween. But unfortunately for them, Michael Myers returns to the house and starts killing them off one by one. So this film has a very early 2000s kind of feel to it. It's very, very silly in places. The whole live stream aspect of the film is a little bit corny and just not the best idea for a Halloween film, in my opinion. But I will say that even though this film is bad, it does have a kind of a so bad it's good kind of feel to it. And I can kind of enjoy it because it is so cheesy and so ridiculous. The cast is not great, but I kind of enjoy things like Busta Rhymes in the film, even though he is really bad, and he pulls out some martial arts at the end of the film, and I know a lot of people don't like that aspect of it. It is bad, but it's just so bad that it's good, and I do find it kind of funny to watch. Um, so yeah, I think for me, I'm gonna put this one in the D tier because even though it is a bad film, I can kind of enjoy it. So yeah, it's a D tier movie for me. It's definitely not the worst one in the series, but it's close. Right, so on to Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007. Yeah, I mean, I've never been the biggest fan of Rob Zombie's films. I just don't like him as a director. I don't like his creative choices a lot of the time. So I was always a bit skeptical when he stepped in to do a remake of Halloween. Um, but what I will say about this film is that I actually don't mind the direction it tries to take. I like how it develops this new backstory for Michael Myers. Now, I've always liked Michael Myers when you don't know anything about him. Like the cult storyline in the previous movies. I don't like that because I don't feel like he needs to be explained and his origin needs to be explained. But with the Rob Zombie film, I don't mind it because it's his version of Michael Myers and it's not John Carpenter's and he's doing his own thing with it. So I'm okay with him developing this backstory for Michael Myers. And with that being said, I actually think the first 45 minutes of this film is pretty good. I actually like all the stuff with the young Michael Myers. I like the troubles he's having at school, the troubles he's having at home when he kills his family, and then all the stuff when he's in the mental institution and he's being examined and evaluated by Dr. Loomis. I really enjoy all that kind of stuff. But it's when the movie goes into the second half and it just turns into this film where Rob Zombie's trying to copy the original Halloween by John Carpenter. And that's when the movie just comes off the rails for me. And I feel like Rob Zombie shouldn't have done that and he should have gone on a different path in the second half. And I think it would have made it a much better film. So it is a film of two halves for me. The first half I enjoy, the second half not so much. So yeah, I'm gonna put this one in the D tier. There are things I like about it, but overall, it just it just falls apart in the second half. Right, on to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 now, released in 2009. So yeah, continuation from his previous Halloween movie. Um, yeah, I've got to be honest here, guys. I don't really want to sugarcoat this one, but I absolutely hate this film. I detest it. I've never liked it, and whenever I rewatch it, I kind of just hate it even more. So this one is an easy E tier for me. It is my least favorite in the series. I know I said before with Rob Zombie's previous Halloween movie that in the end he tried to make it too much like the original and he should have made it his own. With Halloween 2, it's the opposite. Rob Zombie does definitely make it his own, but for me, he goes way too far in the other direction, and I've just never enjoyed this film. It doesn't bode well when the opening 20 minutes of the film is a really tense sequence in a hospital. And spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, but I was really disappointed that this scene ended with it being all a dream. I just thought it was a very lazy way to start the film, and yeah, it's things like that I don't like about this movie. I don't like the fact that the movie is very mean spirited and very dark. A lot of the characters are so horrible in this film, and it's typical of a Rob Zombie film where all of the characters are just so horrible to each other. The dialogue is really atrocious, and it's just not a fun movie to watch. And I know there is arguments that this film is meant to sort of deal with the post-traumatic stress of Laurie from the previous film, and I do appreciate that and I do admire what they were trying to do, but for me it just strays too far in that direction, and like I said, it's just a very unpleasant movie to sit through, and I just don't enjoy watching it whatsoever. I like my dark horror films. I like dark, mean-spirited, unpleasant. But this one just, you know, it just feels too unpleasant and it has no payoff in the end. So, yeah, it's an E tier for me, and I'm really sorry for anyone who's a fan of this movie, but yeah, I've just never really liked Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Right, so on to Halloween now. This is the 2018 movie. This is the one that does another reset on the series, and this is the one that is just a follow up to the original Halloween and ignores everything else. It's set 40 years later. We see a different version of Laurie Strode. We meet her family in it. It's set back in Haddonfield. It's all about Michael Myers being locked up, and he's been locked up for 40 years since the ending of the first Halloween movie. And yeah, when I first saw this movie, I really, really liked it. And to this day, I still really like this film. And yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say it, guys. This one is probably an A tier for me. I've always liked this one. I think it's a good continuation of the first movie. I think it's scary. It makes Michael Myers an intimidating, scary presence again. You've got the music by John Carpenter in this one, and I just think it has a lot of tense, scary moments in it, and overall, I just really enjoy it. And yeah, I can't really say much more than that. I just think it's a good, solid entry in the series. And had they not done all of the other films and this had been a straight legacy sequel to that original film, like you imagine the original film came out, it had that ending, and then we had nothing for 40 years until this movie. I think a lot of people would look at this movie and think, yeah, it's a solid legacy sequel. And that's how I see it. And yeah, I just think it's a really, really enjoyable entry in the series. Not as good as the original, of course, but it's an A tier. It's one of my favourites for sure. Right, so that brings us on to Halloween Kills. So yeah, the continuation of the first one takes place not too long after it. Sorry, the first one as in the 2018 one. Yeah, I mean, this one seems to have a very mixed reception amongst the fans, but I've got to admit, I quite like this one. I just think this movie is fun. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's amazing and that it's as good as the 2018 one, but what I like about this film is that it provides lots of action, lots of kills, lots of gore. Michael Myers is very predominant in this film. He is at his most brutal. He is pissed in this movie, and he does some horrible stuff to people in it, and I'm here for it. I love this film. I just have an absolute blast with it, so much more than a lot of the others. And I know story wise, it is a bit of a mess. It tries to do way too much. And I know that sort of there are some aspects to it that aren't great. The whole mob mentality story, the evil dies tonight stuff, all of that stuff I really don't like. But pretty much everything involving Michael Myers, I really like in this one. And like I said, he is very predominant in this film. So it's a guilty pleasure for me. I know it's not amazing and it has its problems, but I just enjoy this one a hell of a lot more than a lot of the others. So this is probably going to be a hot take, but it's going to go into the A tier for me. I just enjoy it so much more than all of these films put together. So yeah, that's Halloween Kills in the A tier. And that brings us on to finally Halloween Ends. Yeah, this one takes place a few years after Halloween Kills. Michael Myers has disappeared. And this one is an interesting one in the series, and one that has certainly divided the fan base, because it tries to take a different direction by not really featuring Michael Myers. It instead features this character called Corey, who is kind of like a bit of a loner, a bit of a strange kid, and he ends up getting caught up in the whole Michael Myers. Well, I don't even know how to really describe it. He ends up sort of finding Michael Myers, and he ends up being influenced by him and going on his own sort of killing spree, if you like. So it's a film that doesn't really feature Michael Myers as much as the previous two, and I know that is a very sore point for a lot of people. And I'll admit, the first time I watched this film, I didn't like it at all. I just wanted more of what we got in Halloween and Halloween Kills, and it doesn't really deliver. I feel like they were trying to do two different things in this film. I feel like they wanted to make this film more, more of a film about the Halloween season and what it means to people, but it also feels like they wanted to kind of shoehorn Michael Myers into it as well. But ultimately, it just doesn't work, and I feel like they should have just gone with one of those ideas and should have just gone all the way with it and discarded the other idea. Didn't matter which idea they went with, but they should have just gone with one and not tried to cram the two of them together. But when I rewatched it, I didn't mind it as much. I could get a little bit more out of it this time, but I still think it has a lot of problems, and yeah, it can be a bit boring at times. It can be a bit of a strange film, um, but I appreciate the effort that they tried to go with this film, but ultimately it probably takes a little bit too much risk. So I think for Halloween Ends, I'm gonna put it in the C tier. It tries. It takes some risks. It works in places, but again, it doesn't work in other places. So yeah, it's probably a C tier for me. So yeah, there we go. So we have Halloween and Halloween 3 in the S tier, Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills in the A tier, Halloween 2 and Halloween 4 in the B tier, Halloween 5, H2O, and Halloween Ends in the C tier, Halloween Resurrection and Rob Zombie's Halloween in the D tier, and Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 in the E tier. So there you go, guys. That is my ranking for the Halloween series of films. Hope you've enjoyed the ranking, guys. Let me know in the comments below how you would rank the Halloween movies. What are some of your favourites? What are some of your least favourites? Do you agree with my ranking? Do you disagree with my ranking? I would love to hear your thoughts. But I'll leave the video there, guys, and I just want to wish you all a great Halloween, whatever you do. I hope you watch some good horror movies over the month. And yeah, I hope you just have a great Halloween. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you all again on the next one. So take care, guys.